It's going to be okay. Hear me out. When I have straight up acted a fool and I say, I'm going to give myself grace, it feels more like I'm saying, I totally screwed it up, but I can get a pass because things are hard. Well, hello friend, I'm Mary Beth with At What Cost, where simple living and deep faith go hand in hand. And I got so excited over this topic of grace today that after I finished talking with a friend and really unpacked this idea, I didn't even want to take any time to do hair, makeup, like setting up a clean shot, nothing. We need to talk, y'all. We need to talk. So part of the conversation that I had with a friend of mine went a little bit like this.
I think God leaves us little breadcrumbs sometimes to help us to get where he wants for us to go.
And other times, he doesn't just send breadcrumbs, he sends a full-on flood, and we have no other option but to reach out to his already open hand to get us to where we need to be. And friends, I have been in the flood this week. It all seems to come back to grace. And then I have this idea of giving myself grace, and there is some friction there. Friction that I just can't seem to resolve. Maybe this will resonate with you. At least I hope that this resonates with you, because ultimately I want for us to get on the other side of this friction so that we can live fully in the abundance that God promises us. But let's first talk about this concept of giving ourselves grace, because it feels like it's everywhere, right? That's everybody's answer. When things are hard, or you do something you shouldn't do, or you have some regret, we try to make ourselves feel better, or other people try to make us feel better about it by saying, just give yourself grace. And it's not untrue. We need grace. We need grace. But we don't give it to ourselves. At some point in this video, somebody is probably going to put something in the comments that this is just a rant or I'm complaining. If that person is you, now's the time. If not, just hear me out here. Because I admittedly have a little bit of a pet peeve when it comes to things like self-care and give yourself grace and all of the things that seem to be a little bit buzzworthy around town nowadays. It all kind of falls into the gospel of the self, which is completely counterintuitive to having a biblical or a Christian worldview. We know that left to our own devices, we would rarely choose the straight and narrow path. We want what we want when we want it right now. And so this idea of taking care of ourselves and making sure that all of our needs are met before we meet the needs of others sounds really good. Like, doesn't that sound great to just feel totally fulfilled and that you have a full cup and you have all of the things that you need? And then, of course, if there's any left over, you can go help someone else. But that's just not the gospel. The gospel really is pouring ourselves out for another. And that's where the friction comes in. The definition right here with just a quick Google search says that in the Christian belief, grace is the free and unmerited favor of God as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessings. So let's work through this idea of giving ourselves grace, because as we start to dig into this decluttering, we're going to be confronted with some things that are probably unpleasant. Now, the idea of giving myself grace has just never really sat with me very well. Ultimately, I never really feel like I need that grace until I've done something that I shouldn't do, or said something that I shouldn't have said, or been somewhere that I shouldn't have been. It ultimately comes out of a place of feeling unwanted, inadequate, or just like I am totally messing all of this up. And then, either from myself or a well-meaning friend, I usually hear,
"You know, Mary Beth, you just need to give yourself some grace. This is a tough season. And when things get hard like this, we just have to give ourselves grace."
I don't really have in that moment a lot of grace to give myself. My natural inclination is not to say, "Self, this is really hard. It should be hard. It's okay that it's hard, and it's going to be all right." It never really happens like that for me. What I usually hear is, "You are a terrible whatever, parent, person, woman, Bible teacher, worker, any of the things, wife." Most often, when I am in that place of feeling totally inadequate, totally rejected, and absolutely where I am very much in need of grace, my natural thinking doesn't take me to a place filled with grace. It takes me to a place filled with self-loathing and hate. And that's just not the grace that sounds like this definition of a free and unmerited favor of God as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessings. When I have straight up acted a fool and I say, "I'm going to give myself grace," it feels more like I'm saying, "You know, I totally screwed it up, but I can get a pass because things are hard." Now, I'm going to pause for just a moment so that anyone that did not want to hear that can go ahead and just get it out. I know you want to say it. It's going to be okay. So in these moments, I need grace. I clearly can't give it to myself. It has to come from somewhere else. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from God. It comes from Jesus. He gives us this undeserved, unmerited grace. It's not a pass for bad behavior. When we look to the free grace given by God, it convicts us in that sin. It compels us to repent and to have the ability to walk in a different direction. The idea of giving myself grace puts all of the dependence on having a better outcome solely on myself. Friends, that is a gospel of works. That is a gospel built on a lie. Jesus came that we would have life and have it abundantly. The life that he is calling us to comes at a cost. Now, he has paid the cost. We are deserving of what he took on, but we receive the blessing because of his grace and mercy. So when we are confronted in those areas of friction, it is kind of a way of shaking us up a little bit, changing our perspective. You know, think about your car. If you're just driving along and everything is smooth, you don't really realize that the suspension is giving out, or maybe that the brakes are starting to fail a little bit. It's not until you hit a bump or you have to stop that you realize that things are a little out of alignment. When we come up against this friction, whether it's in parenting, working, our marriages, decluttering, our household management, whatever it is, our longing to walk more in alignment for Christ is what drives us to look inward at our own sin and realize that it doesn't have to be that way. So whether it's decluttering and facing some of the decisions that we've made that have maybe led us to this place of having too much, or just in parenting our kids, interacting with our spouses, friends, or neighbors, we can apply this same idea of grace no matter the circumstance. I want to encourage you today, if you have not yet subscribed, to go ahead and click that subscribe button, hit the little bell so that you're notified every time I upload a new video, which is typically on Fridays and Sundays. But again, life happens, friends, and sometimes I get a little behind. If you would like to see more of what we cover on our Study Tips Sundays, you can click the link right over here. And to see more about decluttering, or even starting your minimalist journey, you can click the playlist right down here. And the subscribe button, of course, is right over here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.